definition and give examples. And as somebody ever heard about Betty numbers? So not that much, not that many. Okay, so let me just give the setup, which allows me to introduce these objects. So far, we have considered metric space with a group acting properly on it. So this space had a distance, but you could imagine topological action, so action by homeomorphism, so or isometry if you prefer. And today I will assume that X is simply connected which means that all loops, so simply connected means that all loops at a point, all closed loop at a point can be contracted, retracted to a point in a continuous way, which means that there are no holes in the space which would prevent to move this curve to the point. Okay, this is simply connected. And the group action will be free, which means without fixed point. Okay, and we'll assume that we then have a quotient y, which is a quotient by x by gamma. Okay, and the projection map from x to this space is a covering space, is a covering map. Okay, and under this situation, so we call x the universal cover of y, and gamma its fundamental group. So it's not okay. So it's just take this picture as a definition. So, okay, so x will be the universal cover of y, and gamma. So usually when you will find it as y tilde in the books, and gamma is a fundamental group. It is denoted by pi 1 of y. Okay. So it's not the only way to define all this object, but in our context, it's probably the shortest one and the more efficient one. But if you are not so familiar with this, I suggest you to look at a site. So you type on the web analysis situs. And there is a lot of papers, videos, and information about topology, algebraic topology, and it's really interesting. And there are a lot of things to learn and there are talks which are filmed, and it's really interesting and nice. Okay, so examples. No questions so far? So the simplest example, so for those you know, it's the simplest example is the following. So you take a circle, and a circle, for the circle, the universal cover is R. Thank you. And so this is the universal cover, and the fundamental group is Z. And the action of Z on this R is just by translation. So N acting on a point X, so N in Z acting on X in R is just a translation by N, okay? So if you take a point and look at its orbit, so you see the discrete set of integer here, and in between two consecutive points of this orbit, you get a fundamental domain, and of course the projection which consists in identifying those 2 points gives back the circle. Okay, so in this case, R is the universal cover of the circle, and Z is its fundamental group. Okay. So I let you do the exercise for y equals the 2 torus. So exercise, draw the picture and verify that the pi1 of y is Z2 and the universal cover is R2. Okay? Same picture, so Z2 acts on R2 by translation with integer coefficient, and you have to find out what is the fundamental domain in this case, and to quotient, and to get to the torus, okay? So I let this as an exercise. So another good example, more singular, so at this point these are manifold. So it's example of a bouquet of circle. So if you take Sy to be 2 circles attached at a point, then if you try to draw the same picture to find a simply connected space on which a group acts, then here is the picture. So you draw a tree. So the universal cover of this bouquet of circle is a tree. So let me just draw a tree. So it's a regular tree with valency 4. So each point has 4, each vertex has 4 edges. And so you keep going until the moment you find it annoying to do it. Okay, so you see the picture. So it's each time you get a vertex, you draw this this picture, and so there are letters A and B, and A inverse, B inverse, and you recognize it the Cayley graph of the free group that Gérard was talking in his first lecture. So this tree is also the Cayley graph. It's an example of Cayley graph of the group F2 on 2 generators A and B. So what is a free group on 2 generators? It's a set of words that you can write in A and B. What is a word? It's just something like that: A to N1, B to M1, A to N2, B to M2, etc., up to A to Nk, B to Mk. Okay, and the multiplication is just you put the word together and to get a new word, a priori longer, and you see this group acts on the tree just following the word. So when you take a certain element of your group, then the orbit of these points is obtained by reading what you see on the word and following the letters that you meet. So of course each edge is labeled by a letter according to this rule that you can see: A minus 1, B minus 1. So the horizontal edge this way is A, on the left is A minus 1, etc. So here there is A minus 1. And so you follow this word, you travel along the graph following this word. And this is the action of the group. And here you can see easily that the fundamental domain of this action will be the union of these 2 edges. And when you pass to the quotient, so these 3 points are identified, and at the quotient you get the bouquet of circle. Okay, so here the pi1 of the bouquet of circle is a free group on two generators, and the universal cover of a bouquet of circle is a tree. Okay? Any question about this example? Okay? So it's interesting because it's a singular example, but you can. So this guy has a fundamental group, a universal cover, and you can build singular objects, gluing higher dimensional simplicities and considering polyhedra, like in the talk of Ivan, and get singular objects which are interesting to study. Okay. So this is a short introduction for fundamental group and universal cover. And what is now the B1? The Betti number, so I have not denoted yet. So you have noticed that for this example, the fundamental group is not abelian. So not any fundamental group is abelian. I mean, if you pick up a group at random, it won't be abelian. It's exceptional to be abelian. And so a way to given a group, a way to transform it into an abelian group is to quotient by the commutator subgroup. Okay, so there is a map from gamma, so gamma is a group, and there is a map from gamma to quotiented by the commutator. So what is this notation? It's a subgroup generated by the set of commutators, so A, B, A minus 1, B minus 1. Okay, so this is a normal subgroup of gamma exercise. And you see, since you have killed all elements of type A, B, A minus 1, B minus 1, you have forced this group to be abelian because you have had all the commutative relations that you could have. Okay, so this is an abelian. So it's simpler, abelian group. It's a bit better, and if gamma is finitely generated, so if it finitely generated means it has a finite set of generators, then this abelian group itself is finitely generated, and you all know theorems that you learn in first or second year at university. An abelian group of finitely generated is isomorphic to a certain product of copy of z to the r, cross a product of finite group, finite cyclic group. Okay, so this is a general theorem, and so this from the fundamental group of a manifold, you can build this abelian group. Okay, and this is called the torsion part, and this is called the torsionless part. Okay, and this abelian group has another name. So let me just explain this. So there is another. Okay, I should say. Okay, so gamma. Can you see if I write here? Maybe I should write here. Gamma AB of gamma A. So it's a gamma make into commutative group, and so we have gamma, which goes to gamma quotiented by this commutator, and this is, for us, it will be equal. So there is another guy here, which is, so I recall that Y is the quotient of its universal cover by gamma. So gamma is a fundamental group of somebody, which is called Y. And so this quotient, I will call H1 of Y with Z coefficient. So this is the homology. It is called the homology group. So for today, we will take as a definition of this guy. Okay, but there are other definitions of this group with several kind of definition coming from okay, different sources, and but we will take it. So this we will take it as a definition, and you can change the coefficient here, and so this is, as I said, this is ZR across a certain finite group, okay, and you can forget about the finite group and send this group into R to the R, which is again, which has a name, and this is so this is homology group, integer homology group, and this is a real homology group, okay? And what you have to remember of this is that, okay, you don't need to know other definitions of H1. What you have to know is that given a fundamental group of a space, you can go into the Abelianization of this group, which you call this H1 of YZ, and that you can sense in a vector space. So this is a vector space now. Okay, and see this map as take the, so forget about this, will be killed by this morphism, and ZR will be sent in RR as a lattice. Okay, this is a picture you have to have in mind. Okay. Okay, so and what we call the first Betti number of Y, B1 of Y, is just the dimension of this vector space. Is there any question? So, whatever it means in another world or room, for us it will be this picture, okay? And the application I would like to give is to derive some constraint, some bound on this number, some bound on the dimension of this guy, so which somehow bounds the topology of the manifold. So it says that this group is not too, so this dimension is R, so it says that this group is not too large. Okay? So it bounds the topology of the manifold with a geometric constraint. So the question I would like to investigate now is what can you say of the implication of geometric on the geometry of Y on this number? Is the picture clear? Do you need some more explanation, or is it okay? Okay, so and so so let me just recall you a theorem. So the question is to relate B1 of Y to the geometry of Y, okay? And there is a theorem, so in the context of manifold, so when you take a Riemannian, a closed Riemannian manifold, so it's a theorem by Gromov and Gallo, so separately they prove the same theorem by different methods, and this theorem says that if you have a closed Riemannian manifold with Ricci curvature bounded below by a number lambda, so let me call it minus lambda by a possibly negative constant. Okay, so Ricci curvature has been introduced by Soma in his lecture, and diameter, and so that the diameter of the metric is less than D, then the Betti number of M is less than some universal constant depending on the dimension, this bound on curvature, and D. Okay? So this is a kind of, I mean, okay, so if you bound the geometry in the sense that lower bound on Ricci curvature and upper bound on diameter, then you bound the Betti number, so you bound somehow the topology, okay? So the two proofs given by Gallo and Gromov are completely different, and I will. So the next step is to explain the strategy of Gromov, the idea of Gromov to prove such a theorem, which is very simple. And we, sorry, D is the diameter. So, the diameter of G is the diameter of mg. Sorry, yes, thank you. Right, diameter of the manifold. Okay, so an important fact to have in mind is that these assumptions are really related to such a bound. Looking at examples, so consider an hyperbolic surface of genus G. So sectional curvature constant -1, okay, and G holds. So it is just SG. G is not really, okay, so okay, gamma. Gamma is a genus. So it means that there are gamma holes in your surfaces. Okay, and so it's an exercise you should also do, which is that in that case, the H1 of this surface is R, the H1 with real coefficient, is R to the 2 gamma. Okay? So you cannot see it right now. If you are interested, we will do the exercise. You can try to do the exercise, but I think you have something which is missing in your mind maybe to compute this. And you see that when gamma tends to infinity, the dimension grows to infinity, and I let you also a very nice exercise to show that if the genus tends to infinity, if the genus of an hyperbolic surface tends to infinity, the diameter has to go to infinity. So exercise, which is a very nice application of Gauss-Bonnet theorem and the volume estimates in hyperbolic space that Soma gave yesterday. So the exercise is that the diameter of any hyperbolic surface of genus gamma is larger than log of 4 gamma minus 2. So exercise. Okay, so these assumptions are necessary. Here you have a constant curvature, but the diameter goes to infinity. So you could say, okay, let me just play accordion and play bandoneon, and you could push the surface to itself in such a way that it becomes of diameter 1, but believe me that it's not hard to believe that at those points here, the curvature blows down to minus infinity. You see it on the picture, but it's true, okay? When you make an homothétie, the negative curvature blow down. And so those two assumptions are really necessary, okay, in this theorem. Okay, so the application of, so this theorem in the proof of Gromov was a consequence of Bishop-Gromov, as explained Soma. And in fact, I will explain you the following statement, which is exactly the same, except that we are in a maybe more general context. So take xd, a simply connected manifold, which is a universal cover. I will say the universal cover with its distance of yd, and I assume that this metric space y tilde d is delta hyperbolic, and that the diameter of y is less than d, and the entropy of of y tilde d is less than h, okay, then the b1 of y is less than a constant, which I will write explicitly, which depends on delta. So maybe I could write it down. So it's less than 2 times 3, this kind of funny constant that Gerard wrote yesterday, e to 24h times 2d plus delta, plus 15 delta. Okay? Okay, so I mean, never mind the. But, okay, so it's worthwhile emphasizing that the constant is you can compute it in this theorem. I mean, in the version of Gromov, you wouldn't you wouldn't get such a constant. Okay, in Galois version, I think you got such version. Okay, such explicit formulas. Okay, so let me explain the Gromov strategy to prove. So it's a very simple idea which follows very simple observation. Okay, so the first observation, so you have to remember the picture we had since the beginning. So gamma, the fundamental group of y, is sent to gamma, the abelianization of gamma, then which is h1 of yz, and which was sent in h1 of yr, and this map we call it has a name, it is a Hurewicz map. So it is a morphism of group. So this is a group, this is a group, this is a group, and this is a vector space. So the vector space is a group in particular, and this map is a morphism for the addition here, and this is called the Hurewicz map. Okay. So the first stupid observation is that the dimension of this space. So if gamma is generated by a finite set of generator, then this vector space is generated as a vector space by the image of those generators, and therefore the dimension of this space is less than or equal to the cardinal of S. Okay? So first observation is that B1 of Y will be certainly smaller than the cardinal of S. Okay? Unfortunately, it's very difficult to, even with geometric assumption, to given a space, so it has a fundamental group, it's very difficult to find a nice generated set of its fundamental group with few elements. So, okay, so here is coming the idea of Gromov. So the Gromov trick. So this is the following remark. So let me just write it down. So if you can find, so gamma is not that good, it's not that easy to work with, but if you can find gamma prime, a subgroup of gamma, of finite index. So what finite index means? Finite index means that the cardinal of the cosettes, you quotient gamma by gamma prime. So gamma prime need not be a normal subgroup, but you look at right coset, for example. It's finite, okay? So if you can find a subgroup with finite index, so this with this property, then, and if gamma prime is generated by some finite subset S prime, then B1 of Y is less than the cardinal of this S prime. Okay? So this is I will explain you this at a moment. So what does it say? Is that it says that if you have a group and you don't know how to estimate the size of a system of generator, if you are clever enough to find another group, a subgroup of gamma, for which you can say that the finite set of generator is bounded, you know the cardinal, then you will get a bound of B1 of course you have to find a gamma prime with the good estimates of this cardinal. Okay? Okay, so why is it true? It's pretty obvious. So maybe because time is running, maybe I let you do this exercise alone. And maybe if I have time at the end, I will commit back. So exercise proves this. The idea under this is you can find as an example. So if you take it's a trivial example, but it explains the idea. So we saw that the circle so Z is acting on R by translation, okay? And Z is the fundamental group of the circle. And if you, so of course, 2Z, for example, so in this case, H1 of S1 is R, because the group is abelian, and the commutator, the quotient is the same as the pi 1, sorry, Z, depends. Okay. So the H1 of S1 with the integer coefficient is Z, okay? And if you take a subgroup of Z, for example, 2Z as gamma prime, so this is gamma. So in this case, it's also gamma, because gamma is abelian, okay? So so this is gamma, and in gamma you can find a subgroup, for example, 2Z, which corresponds to taking half of this orbit, okay? And you see that it also generates the same vector space, okay? So in fact, you have the same inequality. So this is more or less the idea, but one can do this rigorously. It's not difficult, okay? Okay, so all the problem now is to find a clever subgroup of gamma of finite index and with bounded number of generators, okay? And I should make a remark here, which is that you will get an upper bound on B1, whatever this index can be. This index could be very large, and you don't care. The bound on B1 doesn't depend on this index, but just on the number of generators of the subgroup. Okay, so it's an important remark. Okay, so we are coming up with finding such a subgroup. Maybe I should keep this thing, okay? Are there any questions so far? No? Okay. So so finding gamma prime, okay? So the idea is the following. So let me just draw a picture here. So I will consider a point X in the universal. So it's the board is the universal cover of Y. I pick up a point and I look at the orbit at the orbit gamma x, so it is a discrete orbit of this point that I have chosen, okay? And And now I draw a ball around x of radius, I have to choose 2d plus r. So x is fixed and r is a parameter I will choose later on. Okay? So x is some point and r is some parameter, and I will choose this parameter later, and d is the bound on the diameter. Okay? And so what I am going to do is to find a packing of orbit. So let me just write the statement and draw the picture after. So I will for such a data, I will choose a maximal packing of this ball by smaller ball of radius r or r over 2, depending of, okay, let me just say it precisely. So choose a maximal subset gamma prime I. So it's a finite subset in gamma. So I will choose a maximal subset of maximal cardinal made of element in gamma, such that if I look at the orbit by this finite orbit, gamma prime I of x, so I have certain point like this, okay, and you have much more point, much more wide point. So in such a way that two such points are far away, are at distance at least r. So such that, so maybe I should write here, the distance between gamma I prime of x and gamma prime j of x is larger than r, and such that the distance, so those points I will pick them within the ball of radius 2d plus r, okay? So I let you, okay, so there are things to check, in particular that you can find at least one non-empty sets like that, but I let you use this as an exercise. But assume that you have chosen such a subset, then you will define gamma prime to be the subgroup generated by this maximal family. Okay? So of course, it's not obvious at all that under these choices, this subgroup has finite index in gamma. Okay? So this is the second question I have to answer. So gamma prime has finite index. Why gamma prime has a finite index in gamma? And so, okay, so let me just make a kind of geometric observation, so to explain how one proves this. So you see, so when I have chosen this element, after a while I will consider the full orbit of x by this subgroup generated by this finite family of elements. So we can enlarge the picture, and you have the full blackboard, which is full of white point and less full than by red point. Okay, and in order to show that, and so the two red and white orbits are orbited by subgroup gamma and the group gamma and the subgroup gamma prime, and in order to show such finite index property, so in order to show that, it suffices to show, it's very easy geometrical remark, and I will explain to you. It suffices to show that the distance that for any y, maybe you can read, so for any y, it suffices to show that for any y in y tilde, then the distance between y and the orbit of x by gamma prime is bounded by a constant, okay? So it's rather natural. So if you think of 2z as a subgroup of finite index in z, every point is at bounded distance of the orbit of gamma prime of the smallest subgroup, okay? So if any points in y tilde, y is nearby, is at uniform distance of a point of the gamma prime orbit, then there will be gamma prime will be of finite index in gamma. This is the idea, and why it is true. Because if you have this, it means that for any g in gamma, apply this inequality to g minus 1. So you have d of g minus 1 x gamma prime x less than c, okay? And this is equal to d of x g gamma prime x less than c, okay? And what does it say? It says that this right coset g gamma prime meets the ball centered at x and of radius c. So you have this picture. You have a ball centered at x and of radius c, and you take g of x, and I look at the right coset, g gamma prime of x, and I am sure that it will meet this ball of radius c. So which means that each right coset meets a ball of fixed radius, okay? And then there are not more right cosets than points inside the ball. But the number of points of the orbit in the ball is finite because we have a group which acts properly, etc. Okay? So in this case, we deduce that the cardinal of the right coset is less than the number of points, the number of gamma, such as the distance between x and gamma x is less than c. Okay? So the next step is to find so the next step is to find to show that this inequality is true for a good choice of a constant. Okay? So let me just write the constant which I need. So I claim that for any y in the space, the distance of y to this orbit by gamma prime is bounded. Okay? So why is it so? So again, it's a picture. Again, it is this picture. I will do another picture. Okay, so let me draw another picture. Okay, so in this picture, I have drawn in white the orbit of x by gamma, and in red the orbit of x by gamma prime. Okay, and okay, so I want to show this. And I even want to show this. I want to show that this distance is strictly smaller than r plus d. So if not, it means that there exists a y such as the distance between y and gamma prime x is larger or equal than r plus d. Okay? And by continuity, moving y towards the orbit of x by gamma prime, I can assume that there exists a point where it is equal. Okay? so I have the following picture. So let's say that this distance is achieved by some element gamma prime 0 of x. Okay, so there exists in the picture, there exists here an element gamma prime 0 of x, and I have chosen a certain point, let's say y, and the distance between y and the red orbit is exactly r plus d. Okay? But now the group gamma acts with a quotient of diameter less than d. So I certainly can find a white point in the orbit of x by the group gamma, alpha x, such that the distance here is less than d, because the quotient has diameter less than d. Okay? And so the trick is now to look at this triangle first, and to apply triangle inequality, which is a very simple thing. And so by triangle inequality, what you can see is that the distance between alpha x and gamma prime 0x is certainly less than r plus 2d, just looking at this path here, and larger than r. Okay? You apply twice the triangle inequality, and you get this. Okay? But now, this achieved, you can play the same game with all triangles that you can see, with another vertex and a red point. So let me just draw another such triangle. For example, this one. Okay? And you can draw all those triangles. And here what you have is that the distance between y and this red point is larger than r plus d. Because this was exactly the distance. So it's larger than r plus d. And so again, applying triangle inequality, what you get is that this distance is larger than r plus d minus d. So the distance, so for any gamma prime in gamma prime, so this is gamma prime x, so it's a red point. Okay, for any such point, the distance between alpha x and gamma prime x is larger than r. Okay? So let's now, okay, so this first come back to this inequality. This says that the distance, okay, maybe I write here, the distance between x and gamma prime 0 inverse alpha x is in between r and r plus 2d. So this is the first inequality. And here this inequality is true for every gamma prime. So I can write this gamma prime as gamma prime 0 times gamma prime. So I just parameterize gamma prime by gamma prime 0 times gamma prime. And what I get here is this inequality becomes distance between gamma prime 0 inverse alpha x gamma prime x is larger than r. Okay? But I can apply, since it's true for any gamma prime, I can apply it for the gamma prime I, which I have chosen at the very beginning as a generator set for gamma prime. And what I come up with is that I have found another element. So what I come up with this new family, gamma prime 0 inverse alpha, and gamma prime I, where I is the family x0, which satisfy all the assumptions, because you see, this is one has this is the first assumption of my maximal family, and this is the second property of my maximal family. So this is more maximal family. So there is a contradiction. Okay. Okay. So it means that one has, and if you give me maybe I have 2 minutes. Okay, I have 2 minutes. So let me just briefly end the proof. Okay, so now, with what I have said before, we are almost done, because what we have, in summary, is that we have found a subgroup gamma prime of finite index in gamma, and which is generated by a certain family of gamma prime I with certain property. And let me just draw the last picture. So if I look at the ball X with radius 2d plus r, then the gamma prime I X. So you have no time to color them in red. So I look at the generator of gamma prime I have chosen at the beginning. So they are at mutual distance at least r, in such a way that if I draw a ball of radius r over 2, you get a disjoint family of balls. Okay, so the family of balls centered at gamma prime x and radius r over 2 are disjoint because of the choice I have made of this family, and this implies, and maybe there are some balls which are at the boundary, but the whole family of balls is certainly contained in a ball of radius 2d plus 3/2 of r, so r plus 1/2 of r, and then the number of this ball is bounded by the Bishop-Gromov quotient that was estimated by Girard yesterday. So because they are disjoint, what you get is that the number of such ball, which is a cardinal of I0, times the volume, times the measure, so the counting measure of yesterday, of each ball centered at gamma prime I. Let me write and explain after. So what I want to say is that each of these balls have the same measure, because the measure is invariant under the action of the group. So each of these balls has the same measure, and so when I count the total mass of these red balls, then I get the cardinal of I0 times the volume of one of them, and this is certainly less than mu x gamma of the ball centered at x and of radius 2t plus 3/2 of r. Okay, which gives that the cardinal of I0 is less than this ratio, which is a kind of ratio that are involved in the Bishop-Gromov inequality. Okay, and if I choose R, so R is free. So now I choose R to be the R0, R over 2 to be the R0 of yesterday. So 10 times D plus 2 delta. Then you can apply the Bishop-Gromov inequality and get a bond, which I don't write again, a bond which depends on delta, H, and D. Okay? And this is certainly, as I said before, a bond of the Betti number of Y. Okay? Okay, so just to finish, this argument is entirely due to Gromov, and the input we have is to improve this theorem is to be able to have bound on this ratio which do not depend on Ricci curvature, but just on entropy. Okay, so I thank you.